Hey friends, so today we are going to go over how I paint my safety eyes. And a couple of quick disclaimers, I am no expert. This is just how I do things, fully self-taught. I used to do nail art, so this is where I kind of decided to jump into this realm as well. I do not sell my safety eyes. It is just something that I create for my own plushies and just because I enjoy doing it. I might one day, but for now, I'm just focused on making them for the stuff that I'm creating. So let's go ahead and jump into my pseudo tutorial. All right, hopefully the lighting's not too bad. Bear with me, guys. This is the first time I'm making a video of this style, so be kind in the comments and bear with me. I've got some of my liquid courage here, so hopefully we get through this okay. I thought we would start by me showing you some of the materials that I use for painting my safety eyes. I do all of my safety eyes in resin. A lot of these things I've had for a really long time, years even, because I used to do nail art. That was my hobby. I did acrylic gels, etc. And that's how I've amassed, a giant collection of glitter colors and additives and things like that. So if you want to know about any of these things, leave a comment and I will get you a link to whatever I can find. It's a lot of stuff, so I'm not going to necessarily put a list together. But if you do want to know about anything, I'll be happy to send you a link. All right, let's start with the resin that I use, which is just this resin that I picked up from Michael's. You could use any. They have some on Amazon that I'm sure is perfectly fine. Anything that cures with a UV light would have worked for me because I am using a UV light that I had from Nail Art, which is by Melody Susie. You would normally just put your hand in here to fire it up. But it works great for the eyes, so, no need to buy something extra. When it comes to my work surface, I just use these little things I got off Amazon. They're basically dental bibs like you would get at the dentist office that they clip around your neck. They're amazing for stuff like this or any craft really, painting and whatnot, because they've got this paper surface so you can kind of wipe your brush off on it and everything. But the back of them is like this slight thin layer of plastic. So they're really good at absorbing and not letting moisture go anywhere. So if you drool on yourself like at the dentist, or if you need a surface to work on that's clean and disposable, these are awesome. I also use for all of my mixing a glass tile. This one I think I got at Floor & Decor. They have them at Home Depot and stuff like that, but it's literally just a glass tile. And I put some of those furniture bumpers on the back of it. I found this to be the absolute easiest and most kind of eco-friendly way to clean up. I was using, paper plate, and then I ended up using those little cups that you can mix things in. But it's a pain in the butt to clean those out. This you can just spray down, wipe off. You can wash with soap and water if you wanted to. So I just find this a really easy way to mix everything as well as clean up after myself. Into the realm of mixing, I use this little, not spatula, palette knife, which is in the paint section of a craft store. And this to me is the best thing for mixing the resin with any additive that I'm adding in. Again, it's something you can just wipe off to clean, and it's just kind of the way I do it and the way I've found works best for me. Some other kind of tools, obviously some kind of paintbrush to use. I also have a dappen dish. This is something again from nail art days that I had, and I will just pour rubbing alcohol into this. I like to use 70%. There's different grades. The 70% cuts through the resin. It also cut through back in the day, the gel polish and things like that for cleanup and stuff. So you can't beat rubbing alcohol for that. I have these little pads. They're little wiper pad things that, again, back in the nail art days, I just have so many of them. I just go ahead and use them. Additionally, on the backs of my eyes to kind of seal everything in, I use gel paint. This is a white and black gel paint, depending on what color glitter or additive you're putting into your resin. You may want to back them in black versus white. Some other things that might be handy are little things where you can kind of move items around on the eye. So these little disposable wooden sticks, or I like to use this little pokey tool. It is called a water marble tool, according to the tool itself, but I call it the pokey tool. And then these little silicone tools work really well as well, because again, they clean up really easy and stuff like that. So I thought today we would do 3 3 different types of safety eyes. To me, they're different types. Maybe they're not to someone else. I feel like there's kind of 4 groupings that I would put safety eyes in. The first is just a straight up like glitter eye. So this type of eye is just literally 1 or more colors of glitter mixed together with the resin to produce a beautiful result. The second type would be using a mica powder, and these can just be mixed directly in with the resin as well. The difference between those two and why I categorize them as 2 different things is the glitter mixes within the resin, whereas the mica powder actually blends into and like melds into the resin. So I treat them differently as I'm applying them, and I'll show you that when we go through those. The third type is what I would call layered, and that's something where we're giving dimension. So so in this case, we have some snowflakes here because I know I want to do a forest guardian that's going to be kind of a snowy theme when the winter comes. Having the snowflakes up front and then some colored glitter behind, that kind of gives this dimensional look. The fourth group, I'd bundle anything else into. So specialty kind of works. I have this eye that I've created for a zombie creature where it's got this milkiness to it, where I've mixed different kinds of resin together. There are some that you can see out there on the internet where you fade from one color to another in glitter. So any of those kind of specialty things, the ones that look smoky because maybe they've used alcohol inks and things like that. That's kind of the specialty realm. We're not getting into those today, but if I do any of those for my upcoming projects, I'll be sure to film that so that you can see that as well. I'm going to go ahead and pour some alcohol into the dappen dish. You don't need a lot, just enough to kind of submerge your brush. All right, I'm going to start the overhead camera. So first I thought we would do our glitter eye as our basics, and I'm going to use this really pretty blue color here for this eye. All right, so for this, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to just do some 25mm eyes. I like to remove the plastic backing. I don't know, I feel like I'm scared it's going to melt in the UV light. It probably won't, but that's just me. So what I'm going to first do is put some resin on the palette. Now, what I've learned is a little goes a long way. So if you think about you were just coating the backs of these in a nice thin layer, I like to do about the size of a nickel, I would say, I guess it is, to start with. When you're doing just plain glitter, it's easy to come back and add more. So if you're not doing any kind of specialty blend, don't be afraid to start with the less is more approach. And then I will just literally add the glitter right on top. And what I like to do is put enough on there that I think it's going to blend, but stay viscous enough that it's self-leveling. And then I'll just use my palette knife to blend together. And you just want to give a little bit of time for it to kind of melt in. It doesn't really melt, but just want to give it a nice mix. And this is a pretty good consistency because I can work with it, but it also still self-levels. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our 25mm eye. And then what I like to do is just scoop up a little bit of the resin, and we're going in a very thin first layer. I just kind of plop it on there. And again, we've made sure that it's still got self-leveling properties. You're not looking for making this completely a solid color yet. Something that I've learned is that just like with the nail art, thin layers are always your best friend. When in doubt, go thin. You can always add more, but what you don't want to have happen is have it not cure properly because the light can't penetrate the glitter. And then it ends up being goopy, sticky, or it just literally will fall right off of the eye. So I just put a nice thin layer, and I like to let that one sit while I do the next one. And I'm somebody who likes to coat the entire back, even though there's that area of the black that you won't see. But if you wanted to save materials, you could certainly avoid, filling it in that way. And I'm just going to show you really quickly what this looks like now. So you can see through a lot of that, and that's okay. We're okay with that. So now I'm going to go ahead, let's bring our lamp over here. And I'm going to put these in the lamp for 60 seconds. So we're going to just go back and repeat that process again with another nice thin layer. It's always a good idea to kind of let them cool if they're warm coming out. So just a heads up on that. If your UV light, if they feel a little warm coming out of the UV light, give them just a second to cool. But sometimes you'll find that 2 coats is enough. Other times you'll find that you need to go in with 3. If it's a solid glitter and it's not like a translucent glitter, I think 3 is probably the most I've ever had to do. If I have a little bit of glitter left on my palette and it's not enough for another set of eyes, I just go ahead. As long as it's not too thick, you want to always be careful that you're not going too crazy thick on the back, because you do need them to be able to, you know, have their backings, obviously. And you do not ever need to go onto the sides. That was something I wasn't sure of when I first started doing this. So this still needs a little more coverage. So we'll probably come back for a third on this guy. But the finer glitter, sometimes you'll come back for a third pass. But we'll put these in for another minute. All right, we're going in for layer number 3. Sometimes I find that my edges are a little bit sparse, and I will angle the eye and just kind of do a wipe off on the brush, and that usually does the trick. Just make sure you're not getting it where it's really overlapping the side. If that happens, that's where these little guys come into play. You can put a little rubbing alcohol or not and just kind of clean off your sides. So it's handy for that. And then I just go through and kind of check and see where it looks like I am missing any or having any light shine through. The other thing you can do is put a light behind them. And that also helps reveal spots where you may not have good coverage. But again, you can always back them with a color, which is going to help that as well. When I'm doing this off of camera, I will often cure them individually. So I'll get one cooking while I work on the next one. But, you know, do whatever works for your workflow, obviously. I will take a dash of the rubbing alcohol and just clean up the eye once it's done. I'll clean the fronts first, and then I will go back through and clean up the backs. But as you can see, really cool glitter eye. So on a solid glitter eye like this, I don't find the need to apply a back color. I'll show you that when we do the next set of eyes, but let's go ahead and talk a little bit about cleanup real quick. So in this scenario, you see I have a little bit of glitter left on here. If it was enough to do another set, I would do another set because I don't like to waste it. This is very little left. I could add more to it and do another set, but then we have a cycle. So one of the cool things about using this tile and using the palette knife is I can just scrape this off and go over to a corner of this and just go ahead and wipe it off. And then I'm essentially ready for my next one. On here, same kind of thing. You can choose to just wipe most of this off. Be careful. You don't want to really touch the resin with your hands. It's not good for your hands. If you do get any on your hands, obviously wash them right away. Another thing I do is I'll pour some rubbing alcohol onto a paper towel, and then you can literally just wipe off your tile. You're ready for your next set. When I'm doing a batch of different safety eyes, I will just section off my glitters and continue and just clean up at the end, but I just kind of wanted to show you what that was like. All right, next up, we are going to do a pigmented eye. Now, these are mica pigments. If you use other types of pigments, they will blend differently, so fair warning on that. I have some fluorescent pigments, for example, that are more of like a chalk base. They're not actually mica. Those do not blend as easily and quickly into the resin. So if you're using those, you just want to really make sure to take your time to blend in, because you'll get clumps and dry spots, and you'll see those in the finished eye, even if you don't see it in what you're putting on the resin. When it comes to the mica powder, I find that even less goes a long way when it comes to the amount of resin that you need. So I'm just going to do like maybe a dime size pour, and we'll see how far that gets us. You can do your mica one of a few different ways as far as getting it out. A lot of them will come with these little spoons, and you can use that. I have these metal spoons from Amazon that I sometimes use, but if I'm going to be cleaning the palette knife off anyway, I will a lot of times just use the palette knife to kind of go in. And again, a little of this goes a long way. I probably just put too much on there, but we'll see. And again, you're just going to want to pat this in, and you'll see as you start working with this how different this is compared to the glitter, as far as it actually becomes a part of the resin versus the glitter just being kind of blended into the resin. It's really interesting to me how it kind of actually becomes what you're working with, if that makes sense. I don't know that it does, but that's okay. And I'm just really sure to push down with my palette knife to make sure I'm breaking up any clumps that might be in there. The mica blends really extremely well. Oh, one thing I'll mention is I used to be really meticulous about cleaning the backs of my safety eyes before applying anything. And then I started kind of testing if the resin does any better or worse, because with gel nail art, you want to have a super clean surface. But I've found that it doesn't really matter, so I don't go by and wipe them off before I start, just so you know. Now, when it comes to the mica pigments, there are a couple different things you can do. You do want to have a thin layer at first, but unlike the glitter, you will see your brush marks if you leave brush marks in the mica. So one thing that I like to do, because I think it looks kind of cool if you ever see the brush marks, is I brush from the center out all the way around, because that's kind of how the iris of an eye looks, you know, not kind of how, that's how an iris looks. So if you want to start your thin layer in a way that kind of, if you see it once you've applied all of your layers, looks somewhat cool or natural, I like to just kind of stripe it out like that. So you can see what I mean there. We'll get this guy cooking while we start the next one. And I always default to the 60-second mark for these. A lot of times what I'll do is at the very end, when I'm done with my whole batch, I'll put them all in and let them cook for like 90 seconds, just as like a final cure. So far, I haven't found that there's any over curing issues, but you can definitely have under curing challenges. So just something to keep in mind. Mica powders, I will definitely do my next layer a little thicker than that first layer. That first layer is kind of what you want to bond to the eye. That's kind of what a second layer looks like. And go in for our third layer. And as long as you see enough of the pigment in the eye that you're happy with, even if you've got a little bit of translucence, it's not a big deal depending on the color of the mica powder that you're using. So this one, for example, I'm going to put a white backing on. So as long as I have that iridescence and I have enough of that on there, then we're okay. So I'm not seeing any light through there necessarily. If I hold it up to the light, I can see a little bit, but that's going to be all right. All right, so when we're happy with our coverage, we're out of resin, which is good. I'm going to go ahead and back this with the white gel paint. Now, one thing I will advise is to have a different brush for your paints as you do for your glitters. That's something that was always kind of a cardinal rule in the gel nail art world. I accidentally broke that rule myself with this brush and wasn't thinking, and I put it into the glitter and was like, no. If you keep a brush that's just for this kind of stuff, then you're not going to ever accidentally end up with glitter somewhere that you don't want it. I will get the smallest amount of this on here and just give it a start. And you can see how well it coats and covers, even with just that little amount that I had. And you don't need a ton. You can put it on full thickness, full coverage. I just give it enough to kind of seal everything in. Maybe if I was, so we're just going to coat this, and this might take 2 coats, but a lot of times you can get away with 1, depending on what color you're backing it with and what's underneath. But So we got a nice layer of that on here. Cure that for 60 seconds. And do our next one. And this really just helps seal everything in. It gives a nice backing, especially when it comes to the mica powders. I always try to coat the backs of the mica powder eyes because there's still some of that mica there. So if like you rub a paper towel on the back of it, a little bit will come off. And it doesn't necessarily matter on the plushie because the eye's not coming out, but I just like to do an overabundance of caution and paint the backs. So you can see like it's pretty solid as far as the coverage goes. So we'll get that cured. See if this other one needs another coat. Otherwise, I think we're probably pretty good. Something I forgot to mention, but I think is helpful to note, if you ever take your eyes out and they've cooled down and you have any kind of stickiness, that is usually because it's not curing properly. So go a little thinner on your layers. Doesn't mean you can't necessarily use the eye. You can cure for a little longer, maybe put another clear coat of resin on so that it's not sticky. But that's generally what that means. So that just means kind of go a little slower, take a thinner layer, and then you'll be fine. And that is our mica eye. All right, let's move on to our third type of eye, which is that layered effect. And again, I mentioned you have to kind of think of from the front to the back. So what we want to see first is our snowflakes and then have them have this lovely background of glitter. So what we're going to do first is work on the snowflake piece. So I'm going to set the glitters aside for now. I'm going to put the tiniest dollop of resin on my palette. And I'm going to use a different brush for my clear here. Doing this is reminding me of how much I probably need to get some different brushes. In my ideal world, I will have a brush labeled for clear, one for glitter, one for mica powders, and then one for coats. The coats and the clear one could be a shared one because there's no additives in it, and you can clean it in between. But it's just something where I'd rather clean up at the end than have to clean in between each one. So I need to go brush shopping. All right, so we've got our nice 35mm safety eyes here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just go right into my resin and just apply a super thin layer. And we're not going to cure this layer. This layer is just to kind of help some stuff stick where we want it to be. All right, so to apply your snowflakes, or it could be flowers or hearts or whatever you're putting on here, you can use some tweezers. I just have these tweezers from back in my scrapbooking day. Gosh, these tweezers are probably 20 years old. So I will grab a snowflake, and actually let's pour a couple of these out because I want to see what sizes we have and stuff. All right, so we have different sizes of these, and these are iridescent white. And then I think we have the same thing with the silver here. Yeah, so we have the small and and I like these ones that have this kind of cut appearance because I find that that's kind of handy on areas where you're going to tuck it in anyway. So you can apply them with the tweezers, or sometimes you can take a little bit of resin on your silicone tool and grab one of these guys. So for example, this guy's kind of a misshapen cut in half one, but I think that would actually be kind of cool where the eye is, or where the pupil is. And you can see it's just kind of stuck on there. And then we'll get one of these guys, let's say right here. And you just place them where you want them, you know. I'm not loving the purpley iridescent ones as much as I thought I would, so maybe we just leave one of those in there. Yeah, I like the iridescent ones. I like the silver. I don't love the pink ones, so I'm going to take that guy out. Get some more silvers to work with. This is the other end of the tool. You don't want to put the resin end of the tool in. Resin will eventually cure, even if it's not under the UV light, because all light is kind of UV, and it will eventually cure. So you don't want to get it on any pieces that you're not going to actually use. Then let's do I have a really hard time being random. All right, we're just gonna go with it. All right, so that's what we're looking like now. We're gonna go ahead and cure that. And when you're doing these additives, there's really not a huge need to go on the side where, you know, there's that tiny bit of exposed space, because it's gonna get lost anyway. And I'll mention, if you have any bits that are sticking over the edge, don't worry, because at the end, if you do have anything sticking out over the end, you can take literally just a nail file and go across the edge. Of course, you want to be careful not to do the file on the front of the eyeball, but you can go across the edge and get any things, pokey bits, you know, whatever might be sticking off. All right, so that's cured now. What I like to do is seal it in with one more coat. I have had where these glitter additives were cheaply made, and if I didn't seal it in, it would eventually bleed. So for that reason, and I feel like it might help with some of the dimension, I go ahead and seal them in before proceeding with our glitters. All right, so we'll clean these guys up while that's curing. All right, so we're ready for our glitter. I'm gonna go ahead and use what I already have here and add to it. And I'm gonna do a glitter mix on this one, just so you can kind of see how I do that. I'm using two different types of glitter, so this should be kind of interesting. So I've got this solid glitter, which is a mix of sizes. There's really tiny particles and then some larger particles of glitter in this purple lavender color. And then I've got this mixture of like kind of a snowy cool toned purple blue. This glitter is much more translucent, and I think you can see that when it comes out. So more than likely, we will want to paint the backs of these just for sake of that, but we'll see how they mix together as far as the translucent versus the more solid colored glitter. And I can already tell that I'm gonna need probably more resin. If it feels very chalky and thick and does not self-level well, you'll want to add a little resin to it. So if it's quite grainy, I don't know if you can see that. It's a little, I could probably get away with it actually. It's leveling okay. Let's get the rest blended in here and see. Anywho, all right, let's go ahead and see how these come out. I've never done these before, so, you know, we'll see together what it's like, but we'll go ahead and get our first thinner layer on here. I don't know, I'm gonna see how they look, but in my mind, I'm thinking I might let this be a little thinner. I don't know, we'll see. I find that as I start going with these, they have a mind of their own almost, where the vision starts to come to life in a different way. So let's see what we're looking like now. Those are pretty cool. I like that so far. All right, we'll get that cooking. Something that I think is worth mentioning is that most of these eyes come with a glitter backing. Sometimes they're paper and sometimes they're this fabric backing. The fabric backing is usually safe enough to use and you're not going to have any issues with it. I just personally like to paint my eyes, so I don't use these. But one thing I will use this for is checking to see what it would look like if I went ahead and did my white backing. You could even paint one of these in black to test that as well. But so right now, this one is slightly translucent. And if I put this on it backwards, so the white side is touching my eye, I can see what that would look like if I backed it in white right now, which I actually think looks pretty good. But because I have glitter left still, I'm gonna go ahead and give it another layer of glitter, and then I know that I'll be good to go with painting it in white afterwards. When I first started doing just the glitter eyes, my approach was to paint a clear resin layer on and then sprinkle the glitter onto the eye and repeat. But what I found is that doing it this way is a lot less messy as far as cleanup goes. And I can control the glitter to resin ratio and how well it's spreading a lot better this way than I could that other way. So that's why I went into kind of the blending of the glitter with the resin before application. But there was a bit of a learning curve there, I will say. Simply because a lot of times in nail art, we would sprinkle the glitter on top of the wet gel polish, but it definitely acts a lot differently on resin eyes than it does with gel polish. All right, so we have our layers of glitter on. I'm gonna go ahead and get the gel paint. We'll give this a coat. And I will say, I can tell that I probably could have stood to add a little more resin to my mixture and go a little bit thinner and slower. And the way I know that is you can kind of see the texture of the glitter a lot more. And yes, it is a chunkier glitter, but you can see here how smooth of a finish this is on the blue, the finer glitter, and just the ratio of resin to glitter versus this one that's a lot thicker. And you'll probably see that a lot better once I start painting the backing color on. You'll see that it's a little grittier than the other one is. Well, this stuff's so thick you can't really tell, I guess, but you can see it a little bit. It's just a little bit grainier than the other one because of that fact that I could have put a little more resin in. Not gonna hurt anything, still fully functioning the way it needs to. Just something to take note of. Could go with my gut. Get that one in, paint our last one here. And I don't know if it comes across in this video, but I really enjoy doing this. And I typically don't paint ahead of time like I am right now. I kind of have an idea in mind of what I want for my Forest Guardian, so I'm going ahead and making these. But a lot of times I end up almost waiting until I'm in the middle of making the plushie, which doesn't make for an efficient workflow. But I just feel like the personality comes out in some of these eyes. So I really do enjoy kind of making them when I already have them started or the colors picked out and stuff like that. But yeah, and there have been times that I've sat here just to try different techniques. So I don't know if you've seen the eyes that folks are making with what looks like a bubble inside of it. That's a technique that was used in nail art as well. So I haven't tried it yet on an eye, but I'm assuming it's similar, in which case you would put a little clear bubble of resin on the eye, cure it, then go back over with your pigments and all that good stuff, and that would kind of create that bubble effect. But that's definitely something I'm looking to doing. I have tried a few other techniques. There's one where you crinkle at the time, acrylic in plastic, and it kind of makes this wrinkly, crinkly effect. And that comes out okay in the eyes as well. It's a little messier. You have to clean up your edges and stuff like that. But you can do all kinds of things with this. You have those little fruit slices you could put in there as long as it's thin enough. I have all sorts of additives, little hearts, little stars. I also have these papers that you can apply to them as well. And what this is you just have a special polish essentially that you would paint onto the eye, cure it, and then it's like sticky, and then you rub this into it. So I think those would make some cool eyes. I haven't tried that yet either. So there's lots of different techniques and things. There are water decals. I've seen some people start to use those in eyes as well. I think all of the nail art is coming over into the eye world, where, you can get the water decals and you can put them on, seal them in, put some glitter behind or whatever paint color, etc. that you want, and those would come out really well as well. Unfortunately, I got rid of most of my water decals. I kept the glitters and things because it's glitter, but I don't have the water decals anymore, and that's something that I kind of wish I would have held on to, because I think that's something that I could put in the eyes as well, but we'll maybe pick some up at some point. All right. And here is our layered eye. I'm going to put all these back in to cook for 90 seconds. And that's it. That is how I do my resin safety eyes. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments down below. Again, I am no expert. This is just how I kind of self-taught myself based off of what I used to do for nail art. And there's so many other techniques and things out there. I don't think any of them are right and wrong. As long as the safety eye holds up, you're good to go. Don't be afraid to experiment. It's so much fun to play with this. If you've never tried it yourself, highly, highly recommend it. If you have the patience for paint, you can do paint as well. It's a lot less expensive to get started with, but I got my resin on clearance at Michael's, and there's a lot of times where they're having good coupons and stuff like that. But again, any questions, anything about the materials I use or anything, please do leave it in the comments down below. If you have anything that you can share with me, I'm always looking to learn from other people. So if you have any recommendations or suggestions or see something that I'm doing wrong, please do let me know. Again, no expert here, but just wanting to share kind of my method and what I do. So again, hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you so, so much for watching. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. You can also follow me over on Instagram. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. I always forget to ask for all of that stuff, but thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.